Okay, everybody, before we get going on the show today, we have some really exciting news to share with you. Andrea, do you want to break the news?
We're coming up on our 100th episode, and we're going to do a live recording.
It's going to be on Zoom on Thursday, September 4th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Dr. Cooper, we also have some big news about the website.
We do. We finally have our fatsciencepodcast.com website up and running, and actually that's where you can go to sign up for this event.
Okay, so go to the website, click on 100th episode, the little button at the top, fill out the form, and you're going to have a chance to ask Dr. Cooper that question live on Zoom to celebrate this amazing milestone. And it wouldn't happen, it couldn't happen without all of you listening from all over the world. All right, let's get to the show. Welcome to Fat Science. I'm Mark Wright, along with Andrea Taylor and Dr. Emily Cooper. Great to see you two.
Hello.
Here.
All right, on the show this week, as the title suggests, we're hearing from you. It's time for the Fat Science Mailbag.
Mailbag.
All right, let's jump right in. The first email is from Sue in Sammamish, Washington, just outside Seattle. Hello, can you please address why some people don't respond to GLP-1s and other similar medications? It's more than frustrating to be told you are a non-responder, in quotes. Please don't say that everyone is different. This podcast is about the science of metabolic issues. I'd really like to know the science behind why these medications don't work for some of us. P.S. I am a patient at the Cooper Clinic. I'm fully invested in figuring out my wacky metabolism. Signed, Sue. Sue, thank you so much for listening and for that great question, Dr. Cooper.
Thanks, Sue. Of course, I'm not referring to you personally or your chart. I didn't really look up anything related to you.
You didn't look up to see why she's wacky?
No, but this is a common question because, as I mentioned in previous episodes, up to 20% of people are much more difficult, and not as straightforward. And it can be even more than that, actually, if you're just looking at the surface numbers. But in any case, it takes a lot of investigative work to try to make sure to look at all the aspects of the metabolic pathway that we have available to us through lab testing. That's why lab testing is so important, because it does give you some insight. And then also the history, if there's a lot of history of dieting, especially we find people who did competitive sports as kids with like the 4-hour workouts and things like that weren't fueled. That also kind of makes the body much more resistant. And so there is something called weight resistance. And then there's something called weight loss resistance. So weight gain resistance or weight loss resistance. And so some people are weight prone and they're resistant to losing weight, where some people are not weight prone and they're very responsive to maintaining like a normal weight no matter what they do. So most of it's determined by genetics. So in cases that are tough, it's good to look deeper, and that can include genetic testing to make sure that there's not what's called a monogenic gene mutation that's blocking part of that metabolic pathway. But also, I think, I hate to say being patient, but trying to patiently kind of whittle away at the possible factors and put some pressure on the system in different areas, including lifestyle that we've talked about with the nutrition, the sleep, the medication regimens, and the stress management and things like that, while looking deeper at the laboratory panels. Usually, eventually, lets you crack the code, for even the difficult patients. So I wouldn't give up hope. And for those out there that are struggling, it's not unusual. Don't feel like you're the only one that's struggling, that these medications don't, quote, work for. Because as we say, the inconvenient truth is that the weight is a symptom. It's not the cause of something. And so it's a symptom of a deeper underlying metabolic dysfunction. And why that's inconvenient is that people want to approach it like, I just take this injection and it's going to change the number on the scale. But there's so much more to this. And so anyway, I don't know if I answered the question well, but I wouldn't give up hope. I would just keep trying to work with medical providers at looking at deeper and deeper reasons why there is that resistance, and keep working on your own ability to support your system nutritionally, stress, sleep, all of those aspects. And hopefully there'll be a breakthrough.
Yeah, I know for me, at different times during the 15 years that I've been on this pathway, different things have been good in terms of changing it. Sometimes it was the type of drug, and sometimes it was adding some different things to my cocktail, and sometimes it was eating more. At one point, I remember I had to eat more. And then, like lately, it was at what I mean. It's as we say. I know that she doesn't want that to be the answer. It's different for different people. But like we added a little bit of naltrexone to my cocktail, and it was amazing what that did. But you know, I'm on a lot of different things with the GLP-1. It's not just that. I wish that that could be the magic pill for everybody, or shot for everybody, but it's not. And you know, that's not how it's going to work.
Yeah. Our physiology, our metabolism is probably one of the most complex things on the planet to try to understand. When you look at the genetics, when you look at the environmental factors, when you look at all the different variables, it's just thousands of variables.
Mm-hmm. And even for me, in the past 15 years, my body has changed even in those 15 years, I think.
Wow.
Right.
Interesting. Well,
The one
Sue,
last
thank you.
comment.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the one last comment on that is to make sure that it's not the high excess weight is not caused by a condition called lipedema, because that doesn't on its own respond to the same strategies. And sometimes that can be missed. And so even within our clinic, just bringing that up would be a good idea to make sure that that's ruled out as a possible cause.
All right. Thank you, Sue.
I have letter number 2. Here's a note from Jenny. What about give me the most hard to pronounce. What about orforglipron? It's a pill. It's in a pill form, and it'll be made available in probably 2026. Made by Lilly.
Yeah, that one, that is going to be one of the next medications that's released. And I think they're hoping to release it first for, quote, obesity and then next for diabetes. So that would be reversing the order of the customary releases that they've had. But it is a GLP-1 and it's in a pill form. Now, as of today, we only have one GLP-1 in a pill form, and that's Rybelsus, which is semaglutide, same as Wegovy and Ozempic. And there's a difference between the Rybelsus and the orforglipron. The Rybelsus is a peptide, which makes it very sensitive in terms of how you have to take it. It's very complicated. It's a little pill that you have to take a half hour before you eat or drink, and with a certain amount of water. And it's hard to manufacture because it can disintegrate easily. So it has to be in these blister packs. So it's expensive. Where the orforglipron is a small molecule technology, which is different. So it still does the exact same things, but it doesn't require as much fussing to produce the medication. And unlike the injectables, it doesn't require cold storage, like a cold chain. So they, because those have to be kept cool. So this pill won't have to be kept cool. So the idea is it's going to be more accessible and more affordable, hopefully.
So you would take it every day?
It's a daily pill. And you won't have to time it around your food or a certain amount of water, and it can be stored just like regular pills. So that would be a big breakthrough because it would be the first one produced like that. And then the semaglutide, the Rybelsus, they are also working on a high-dose one that has equivalent efficacy as the Wegovy. Where their current one is not as effective as the Wegovy. But they're going to be coming out with their version, which is going to be as effective probably as the Wegovy. So these are 2025, 2026. We may be seeing some of these come out. And the orforglipron effect is hard to know for sure because the final studies aren't out, but it looks like it's close to the Wegovy effectiveness.
Is that going to have a different drug name when it comes to market because
Yes.
orforglipron just doesn't roll off the tongue.
It
Yeah.
will, just like, the others have. You've got liraglutide as Saxenda,
There
and
we
you've
go.
got, yeah, they'll come up with something catchy.
They'll come up with something better. All right.
Or
Thank you.
Orphe.
Yeah. Jenny, thank you for the question. All right. Our next email is from Michelle. She says, hello, I've been a listener of Fat Science since starting a GLP-1 in January. I'm so grateful for all the helpful information you make accessible. Thank you, thank you. I have a question about the impact of GLP-1 meds on the liver. I've been doing very well on Zepbound since starting the meds in January. It's been life-changing in many ways. I've lost weight, my inflammation's gone, fatigue is improved, PCOS being managed, fatty liver undetectable on ultrasound, my insatiable hunger and food noise is calmed down, the list goes on. But she goes on to say, my blood work recently came back with very elevated ALT and AST. My liver panels have always been completely normal until now, and the only thing that's changed is the addition of Zepbound. So she has a few questions. Has Dr. Cooper seen this caused by GLP-1 meds, specifically Zepbound? Do you have any insight on what could be causing this if it isn't the meds? And do you have any referrals for a specialist in Colorado? So those are the questions, Dr. Cooper, from Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. And Michelle provided a little more detail in there about like other things they ruled out and things. So I appreciate that. But one of the things, if you see these elevated liver enzymes, it is very common to see elevated liver enzymes with weight changes, whether the weight is increasing or decreasing. So it could be that the Zepbound addition caused the weight to change quicker at a faster pace or more dramatically, which can temporarily cause fat mobilization that overfloods the liver with fatty acids. And so that can be a temporary fluctuation where they're called transaminase levels, where they elevate. And the numbers that Michelle provided were pretty high. So that's why her doctors were concerned about it. But in the prescribing information for Zepbound, it's not thought to cause liver damage of any type, although they do see the fluctuations that normally occur with weight changes with all the GLP-1s. And according to what I looked up, it's less than 2% have high spikes like Michelle reported, but they did observe some. But again, it wasn't thought to be a reason for discontinuing the medication necessarily. Because it was transient and just kind of related to the dramatic weight loss and the fatty acids that were mobilizing. But and you've already, Michelle, said that hepatitis was ruled out because hepatitis is important to get the hepatitis profiles, both B and C hepatitis, and that the liver ultrasound didn't show fat, and it sounds like you don't have fibrosis scores on your blood work. So then in that case, I think the thing to do is to mainly just repeat the test and see what's happening, while also ruling out some potentially what seem like innocent causes. We see a lot of these liver enzyme changes with other medications, and I know that it wasn't mentioned that there were other medications, but Advil and ibuprofen, those kind of over-the-counter Aleve anti-inflammatory medications really can be linked to sudden surges in these transaminase levels. Also, certain viruses that are common viruses. So that's why seeing one set of levels look like that, I would probably want to definitely repeat it and look a little bit further at all the different potential variables. And then pair that with what's the weight change rate. And it may be that it needs to be discontinued to figure out what, for a little while, or needs to be reduced to figure out what's going on. But it usually is not a big cause for concern. But, of course, not being privy to any of the workup, we just don't know if in this case it is.
And in terms of a referral to a provider, Dr. Cooper, is your best advice normally to find someone who's board certified in obesity medicine? Is that kind of the benchmark that you look for?
That would be, yes, for anything related to the obesity medications and things like that, management, an obesity medicine certified provider. But I think you're on the right track also looking for a gastroenterology person who specializes in liver health. Getting their opinion too is smart. But it sounds like Michelle's LinkedIn into that kind of a system right now. So it might be good to just go back to them and request repeating the labs, doing some sequential testing to see if it's calming down. Because often you'll see these big surges and then it'll just appear normal shortly after that. And then just making sure no anti-inflammatories, no alcohol, things that could be irritating the liver, and no recent viruses.
Yeah. All right. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for
Interesting.
listening and for the great question.
That's interesting. Next question. Hi, Fat Science team. First, love the podcast. What validation and reassurance you provide to those of us who yo-yo diet, ooh, that was me, and are so hard on ourselves. In the February 3rd podcast, Cravings, Culprit or Symptoms, you mentioned something that I'm hearing as the POMC pathway when talking about the drug Contrave. I've tried looking up the pathway to learn more, and I must be hearing it incorrectly. What's the name of the pathway? Thanks for all you do for the community. Katie. It's funny because people always is like, is it POM, P-A-L-M, POM, P-O-M, POM, P-A. So we should probably spell it out because it is, I guess it is confusing.
That's true. And that's like an abbreviation, but it's pro-opiomelanocortin pathway. So,
oh my God.
So thanks, Katie, for bringing this up. It's abbreviated P as in Paul, O-M as in me, C, POMC, the POMC pathway. And it's a really important pathway. And you mentioned that we discussed it in context of cravings and of the Contrave discussion that we had. And this part of the it's called the melanocortin pathway, is the section of our metabolic feedback loop that's in our brain. And so when the signals come into the brain, they pass through various what I call substations. And one of the main substations is the POMC station. And that's where we produce a whole bunch of different hormones. And those include POMC, which is, those include pro-opiomelanocortin. So that is POMC. And then that goes on to produce ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. And from there, melanocyte-stimulating hormone. And melanocyte-stimulating hormone is a key hormone that has a very positive influence on our metabolism because it activates receptors in our brain that regulate not only our satiety signals, but more importantly, our insulin levels and our energy expenditure. And so it's really critical for normal metabolic function. So the GLP-1s, for example, don't operate directly at that substation. They operate upstream of that. And so they help the signals get to that area. And they do help it move through there, but not very powerfully. And so that's why we were talking about medications like the Contrave, which has the ability to really activate that little substation because it has two medications. One is bupropion, which helps stimulate the production of the ACTH hormone that the MSH is made from. But without the naltrexone, it can't take that next step really very easily to make the MSH for various reasons. It's mainly because if you have glitches in your metabolic pathway, from the ACTH to the MSH, you can end up abnormally building up a bunch of endorphins, and those endorphins actually slow down that substation. So the addition of naltrexone to the bupropion helps resolve that problem and enables things to just move through much more smoothly. So that's why we were, at the time we did the episode, we were kind of knocking the Contrave advertising because they were so focused on that it's for cravings instead of talking about like more of the biochemical and biologic advantages that it produces.
All right. What a great question. A lot of people probably wondering about POMC and the pathway. Thanks, Katie. Next up, we have a question from AI Pat. I'm guessing Pat is real, and so is Pat's question. I'm going to summarize this. Dr. Cooper, apparently Pat's been on Zepbound. He's been concerned about some things that they have read about whether GLP-1s can cause vision issues. A lot of scary articles on the web. What do the actual studies and real-life cases show in your experience? That's from AI Pat. Anything to that, Dr. Cooper?
Yeah, I'm really glad to get this because this is something I've been looking into too. And so there's been a couple of things that have developed recently in this area. The first was a bit of a scare that the GLP-1s, they were singling out semaglutide at the time because that's what they were observing. They seemed to be potentially associated with a rare eye condition that can be very threatening to vision, and it's called NAION. Um, it's NAION, and it has to do with the blood supply to critical parts of our vision mechanisms. And so what they noticed was there seemed to be an increase in people diagnosed with that had been on semaglutide at the time. But it was an observational study, so it wasn't really well done. I mean, it wasn't very convincing because they didn't separate out different kinds of risk pools of people. And with diabetes, there are always increased risk of vision issues associated with diabetes and with some of the conditions that the people had going into, that study, or it wasn't even really a study, but that report. So then, since then, there have been some other ones, and they've been trying to see if there is a connection or there isn't a connection. And then finally, I think they did do recently a much more in-depth analysis that looked at a much larger group of people, and they said that there wasn't a connection. So we're still going back and forth of whether there is or isn't a connection. But my thought on that was this NAION, it occurs due to nocturnal low blood pressure episodes. So when you're sleeping, if your blood pressure drops too low, the blood supply to the eye can end up getting impaired. And what we know about all these medications and anything really that improves our metabolic system is if you had elevated blood pressure before and you're taking these meds, your blood pressure is going to normalize. And so if you're on high blood pressure medication and nobody's monitoring it, it could be that you're over-medicated after a while. So my thought was, if they are observing it, could it be that people who have been treated with antihypertensive medication haven't been monitored, and as their metabolism's been improving, their blood pressure medication has not been reduced like it should? And if that's the case, then being over-medicated, you're going to be prone to hypotension, which is too low of a blood pressure, and especially at night when you're asleep, which that itself could be a risk factor for NAION. So I don't think that anyone really has looked at that, but my thought is that it probably is linked to something like that, where we need to monitor patients' blood pressure if they're on antihypertensive medication while they're doing metabolic treatments, because often the blood pressure improves to the point where they're being over-medicated and you need to get rid of those blood pressure meds. So that's the main thing with that condition. But now more recently, just this week, there's this is something that they already knew, that in patients with diabetes that are taking the GLP-1s, there was a slight increased risk of macular degeneration, wet macular degeneration. And they have observed that long ago. And there's another study that came out that was confirming that. But whether it's NAION or macular degeneration, the overall thinking, and I agree with it, is that the benefit of these medications far outweighs the odds that you would end up with a complication like that, because the risks of diabetes or cardiometabolic dysfunction are way higher chance that that's going to hit you than one of those very rare associations. But having a good ophthalmologist is really good to start with, to get a baseline. And then if you notice any change in vision, it's always good to go see your ophthalmologist.
Yeah.
All right. Pat, thank you for the question.
Here's from Cindy. Love the podcast and all the insightful information passed along each week. Nice. I've been trying very hard to apply the knowledge learned through your podcast to my daily life. I'm curious if drinking a flavored seltzer should be off limits, like a Waterloo or LaCroix carbonated, or LaCroix, I don't know how you say that, carbonated water with 0 calories, 0 sweeteners, but they have the essence of lemon or orange, vanilla, strawberry, etc. I drink at least one of these a day. And what about gluten-free items? Thank you so much, from Cindy.
That's a great question, Cindy, because those are very common things that people consume. And, we want everyone to be hydrated. So it's great to hydrate yourself. And I know a lot of people like the flavored waters. The main thing I would be concerned about is just, we talked about before that beverages in cans often contain the liner of the can contains BPA or BPS, which are chemicals that can leach into the fluid. And if it does that, it can raise your blood pressure. Just drinking one can raise your blood pressure for like 4 hours after that. And also over time can impair the metabolic function if you're a habitual drinker of those beverages that are in cans. So it's not so much the beverage, it's the way it's delivered. If it was in a bottle that didn't have any chemical additives, it wouldn't be the same. So I always worry about any kind of those canned beverages being a common thing that you consume all the time. It's one thing if it's once in a while, but if it's a daily habit and that's what you rely on to hydrate, you could be getting exposure to some of those endocrine disruptors through the cans. And then we've talked about artificial sweeteners are not great because they alter our microbiome and they make us more susceptible to diabetes and diabesity like pathology. And so avoiding artificial sweeteners and avoiding the cans is the main thing. But, if you want to squeeze lemon or lime or put some extract of something, I don't know why that would be a problem. So that's just my thought on that. And then with the gluten-free, that is a huge craze in our society that supposedly gluten-free is like the healthy choice. And it's not really true because study after study shows that the higher the gluten is in the diet, the lower the risk actually of diabetes and obesity, which is the opposite of what people think. But gluten is in so many beneficial whole grains, and we don't want to just eliminate those if we don't need to because they have anti-cancer properties and they're good for preventing heart disease, diabetes, obesity, as I said. So, but there are some people that absolutely cannot eat gluten and, that have celiac disease. And if they even come in contact with the gluten, it affects their absorption of all kinds of nutrients and it can make them sick. And so you want to separate out what's the reason for avoiding gluten. And if there's a good medical reason, then yes, you absolutely need to avoid it. But if it's something that people are doing because they assume it's good for health, that's really not true. And it should not be eliminated. Because one concern is that once you eliminate the gluten, a lot of the foods that are gluten-free are more processed. They're higher processing to get the kind of feel of the gluten. And so they have to add a lot of things to that, which could be damaging to your metabolism and your health. And so, again, whole foods that you can recognize all the ingredients. Don't avoid any type of food unless you have a specific medical reason to do that. And if you're in question, you could ask your doctor for testing for celiac disease to make sure that you don't have anything like that. And I know that there are some people who do not have celiac and they do have gluten sensitivities that are pretty powerful. So, that could be also discussed with your doctor or a dietitian.
Wow, that's some great information. I have a friend, here's kind of a hack. I have a friend, I went over to her place a while back, and she went to the fridge and got out a glass bottle with a rubber stopper, and it had mint leaves, sprigs of mint in there. And it was so refreshing just to have a little mint water. And I like your idea, Dr. Cooper. A little lemon, a little mint, a little this, that. You can make all kinds of and they have carbonators if you like carbonated beverages.
Sure.
They have some pretty handy ones.
Yeah, they're pretty easy to do. And they're not that expensive now. They're really, you can make your own carbonated water.
Probably save you money in the long run.
Yeah, and you can just stick in, like you said, I was going to say, you could stick in mint, you could stick in lemon or oranges.
Rosemary.
Yeah, and
That's
you can
great.
make your own LaCroix.
So, Dr. Cooper, every can, we think of it, it's just aluminum or it's just tin or whatever.
Yeah.
But every can has a plastic lining that we buy?
I don't know if it's every single one, but the vast majority.
They
I
do.
think it has to do with regulations that we have in our country where that's required of food manufacturers. I think it's meant to
For shipping.
well, I think it's meant to prevent corrosion and stuff.
Oh, I see.
But
Yeah, because the pop is acidic sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
So that it doesn't rust, I think, or something.
There we go. Okay, really great email coming up from Nicole. I'm condensing it just for time's sake, but just really good information. Thank you for your podcast. It's helped me improve my metabolic health and manage chronic pain after years of struggling with fibromyalgia and major weight gain from medications like Lyrica, Cymbalta. Zepbound is my first treatment that has helped me lose weight and manage my symptoms. As an occupational therapist, I use non-drug pain management strategies, but still need effective pain relief. Many chronic pain meds, especially GABA-related ones, cause weight gain or have negative metabolic effects. So, question for Dr. Cooper, what are the best options for managing chronic pain that have the least impact on metabolism and weight?
this is a good question and a hard one because it is so frustrating because chronic pain is not good for our metabolism either, because we talked about before that when we're in pain, our ghrelin levels increase, and that leads to increased cortisol, and it's just not good, and it disrupts our sleep, and that leads to more metabolic dysregulation. So we don't want the pain to be there, but most of the pain controlling medications do hamper metabolic function. So as was brought up, the GABA related ones, GABA is kind of like a tranquilizer. And what it does, so it's in sleeping medications and things like that, but it also is used for pain management. And so, but it suppresses, we talked earlier in this episode about the POMC pathway, POMC. And so GABA related compounds, as well as opioids, suppress POMC function. And so then that's why they can be linked to weight gain. And they also can be linked to disrupting glucose levels and insulin levels as well. And so it's tough because on one hand, you don't want to be in pain, and that's also affecting your metabolism. But then when you add these medications, it may control the pain, but then it makes your metabolism just as bad or worse. And so, and steroids are up there too. Steroids are used for pain too, and they also impair the POMC portion of the pathway. So the POMC is very sensitive to medication effects. And so if there's any way to use a non-narcotic, non-GABA type of medication, that is always best. But even things like, I think, SSRI medications are used, which are kind of antidepressants that are also used for pain management, and such as Cymbalta, that also leads to weight gain frequently. So what's the answer?
What do they have?
My question would be, and I know that this letter referred to fibromyalgia as the background and the basis of the pain, and I would go back and see. I know that it's been looked at, what's the cause of the pain, but I always would go back to where is this pain coming from? What is causing the pain? And that is so critical of a question to find out, because if there's also metabolic dysfunction, a lot of things that have to do with the metabolism when they're off balance can be associated with pain, inflammation, muscle stiffness, all kinds of things. It could be a symptom of a metabolic dysfunction. And so even though taking the medication may calm down the pain, it may not be correcting the underlying problem that's the root cause of it. So what I would do is try to look deeper at what could be the cause of the pain in terms of a metabolic potential cause. And that could have to do with insulin levels. That hormone that we've discussed before, adiponectin, is a hormone that's produced by the body fat, and it's a powerful anti-inflammatory medication. I mean, not medication, sorry. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory hormone. I see it as a medication because it has like a medication effect in the body.
It's a body medication.
Yeah.
It's your own medication inside of you.
Exactly. But if it's deficient, or if your insulin levels are really high, you could have stiffness, pain, a feeling of inflammation throughout the body. So treating the metabolic problem more aggressively, and it may require more than just the Zepbound, could potentially target whatever that root pain causes. So I'm not a pain specialist, but I would encourage working with the pain specialist and saying you absolutely don't want to, unless absolutely necessary, take an opioid medication or a GABA type medicine or SSRI. You're kind of looking for some other alternative to manage the pain, and then to your primary doc who's providing the Zepbound, looking at deeper maybe at the metabolic profile, and if there's anything else that they're detecting that could be triggering the pain. Even seeing a rheumatologist if you haven't. Rheumatologists are great with just muscle pain and joint pain and things like that to try to get to the root issue.
Wow, Nicole, thank you so much for a great question and also for listening to the podcast. Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
This one is from Kate. Hello, Dr. Cooper, Andrea, and Mark. Hello. I work at the Center for Weight Management at Providence in Portland, Oregon, and I love your podcast. Many of our providers listen to it, and we recommend it daily to our patients. In one of your latest episodes, you were lamenting the need to use the phrase mechanical eating and feeding. Our RDs use the term meal patterning in the place of mechanical eating. Maybe Andrea will like that better. Warmly, Kate.
I love the suggestion, right? Because mechanical eating sounds kind of robotic. It is time to eat lunch. Let me get my... That's what I think of when I think of mechanical eating.
It does. It did sound very robotic. And then, of course, meal patterning. I'm now picturing like a pattern to make a dress. And now we're cutting we're cutting out meals, which could be really cute. So I kind of like that too. But
I love the fact, though, that they're spreading the podcast.
I like that.
The podcast. Kate, thank you so much for that.
That's so nice. That's so nice.
Yeah, I'm so
Dr.
happy
Cooper,
to
hear. What is your professional reaction?
Well, I'm so happy to hear that this weight management at Providence in Portland is
That's so cool.
aggressive in this area and trying to provide, great information to their patients and things. And I love the suggestion. I'm going to maybe try it out with some patients and see if they like that phrase, meal patterning. It is the kind of thing that we're just trying to convey consistency of eating throughout the day. And that consistency more and more has been shown to really impact our metabolic system favorably if we have that consistent kind of something that your body can rely on. So it's not always wondering, should I conserve energy because I don't know when the next meal's coming, or am I feeling pretty secure? And so I like that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see you, Dr. Cooper, sneaking, I think, raisins every once in a while. Are raisins your go-to snack?
It is I don't know. Raisins are magic for me. They just feed my brain. They fuel my brain so well. It's just, I think everyone has their own thing. But for me, if I have to have my brain working, so at the start of my day, if I know I have a busy day and I just really need to be on top of my game mentally, I just always have a little bowl of raisins, and I'm just always eating raisins. I learned this way long ago, before I was even in med school, when I was doing an intensive chemistry program, and we were, needing to study like crazy. I noticed if while I was studying, I was eating these and I mix it with like almonds or sunflower seeds or something. If I'm eating that, my brain just was so much more alert and just sharper. And so I've taken that. That was actually way back in college. So I've done this for years with raisins.
Andrea, what's your go-to?
I like raisins and nuts, and I like cheese and cracker.
Ooh, yeah. Cheese and
Yeah.
crackers are
Cheese
good.
and if I do cheese and cracker, like I like cheese and cracker with like fig jam on it, that like sweet and salty together. It's always sweet and salty together.
Yeah.
I love a handful of blueberries, and I also, if I can open a can of large, colossal black olives.
Oh,
Black olives are so
they're so
satisfying.
good. They're so
Yeah.
good. Now, Mark, what about you though? Like, because it's that brain performance. Our brain uses so much glucose. What when you were having to do live TV hits and all that stuff, that seems really stressful. That live TV. I mean, to me, when I went on there, that was so stressful. But would you fuel a certain way for that and find that your brain was sharper, or you were?
Well, honestly, back in the old days, it was like 5 cups of coffee throughout the 4.5 hour morning show. But also, yeah, having some food in the system was definitely important. But I think you're right. We underestimate the drain that happens when we use our brain.
Yeah.
So, like at the end of a day, if you've had a long presentation or whatever, you can really feel, oh my gosh, I'm wiped out.
Yeah.
And so and especially on television, when you literally have to be paying attention
Yeah.
every second of who said what, who's next, what's,
Yeah. It needs to
keeping
be
track
fired.
of all
You
that
need
stuff
to really
for
be
mental
firing.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it
Some of
takes,
yeah, some of our patients that have jobs that require like super high brain functioning, and they also are athletes. I'm always helping them figure out and be aware of the need to fuel the brain that way while they're doing their work, because then it becomes a competition between the muscles and the brain for those fuel supplies. So it's even more important if you're both working on both ends of that, where you're straining your body and you need the fuel for that, and then you're straining your brain and you need a lot of glucose to supply the brain too.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, we're out of time. And this has been another edition of Mailbag. Coming in the future, we're experimenting with the idea of maybe having a Fat Science Live, where all of you listening can tune in from wherever you are around the world on a platform where we can actually have your questions in the chat directly to Dr. Cooper. And so stay tuned for that. We're still working out the kinks, but I think that might become the official iteration of Mailbag in the future. Thank you, everybody, for another edition of Fat Science.
No diets, no agendas, just science that makes you feel better.